Welcome back to the Bucket Bros, everybody. It's Bobby and Ronnie, and we're here to fill your heads with basketball knowledge. So we hope you're ready. Hope you're ready to take it all in. How you doing, Bobby?
Welcome, everybody. I'm doing great. Happy to be back. Been a busy week. Trying to tune in. Trying to keep tabs on everything that's going on. I would
Life
say
happens.
say that again.
Said life happens.
Oh yeah, but ball is life. So the two are synonymous. But yeah, I mean, we could just go ahead and jump right in if you
Yeah,
want.
let's jump into it. I think there's a big story that you want to talk about here. Something might have happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys were paying attention, the Cleveland Cavaliers are no longer undefeated, falling to what's probably going to be their biggest rivals this season, the Boston Celtics, the favorites to win it all. It was definitely a Celtics dominated game. They were coming out hot right from the start. Another 20 plus 3-point game. I don't know what streak that puts them at. Maybe you can look that up while I jabber a little bit. But they've been on a hot streak of 20 plus of 3-point games. Insert advanced stat about that because that is just absolutely wild. But yeah, they certainly couldn't miss at first. They got up really big early on in the game. They had a 20-something point lead, which they were holding for quite a while, up until third quarter when Cavs made the big swing to come back. And I definitely think the biggest X factor in that third quarter was Evan Mobley, who I think had 14, 16 points in that quarter. The Celtics, who were playing, again without Porzingis, still waiting for him to come back from injury. Hopefully we get a better update on his timeline soon here. But yeah, they just did not have an answer for Evan Mobley. He seems to continue to be on this upswing in his game where he's just kind of maximizing the things that he does best, getting to his spots, getting to the hoop, seemingly at will. The dude is just super athletic. Certainly, Al Horford, who is known for being a great defender, he was giving him, I'd say, the most amount of trouble, but that wasn't that much. Basically, just wouldn't let him go left, as easily as he would like to. But the Cavs were really good at finding those mismatches for Evan Mobley during that big comeback. And they got to within a possession, and that went back and forth for a little bit, but that was basically it. I would say even coming into the fourth quarter, the Celtics were controlling the game pretty steadily. The end of the third quarter, a little bit of spoils on the Cavs when there with Tatum's nice little step back, and he dropped Georges Niang to hit that buzzer beater. I'm sure he felt great about that. But that was definitely another thing to watch. Was I would say maybe a little credit to the Cavs because they were without Okoro in that game, which is probably their big wing stopper. But when you're relying on the likes of Georges Niang, who I absolutely love to watch, but it's probably not going to go your way against guys like Tatum and Brown. And oh, by the way, it just keeps going with Derek White and Drew Holiday. The size of their backcourt and their wing rotation was really starting to show during that game. They just didn't really seem to have anybody to play defense on what that team is basically based on, which is just like really solid guard and wing talent, just high end guard and wing talent. Yeah, I mean, I'll start with that. I'll see if anything you want to jump in, any observations you may have had.
I think I have to second your, this is going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be a fun series to watch through the rest of the season. I was just checking to see they play December 1st again. So I think it's going to be a nice kind of rebound where they can kind of see match up against each other. I know the Celtics play the Timberwolves here in about a week. Excuse me. And then we have the Thanksgiving games and then it kind of gets into the meat of the season. I think that's kind of the fun time when everybody starts situating through their injuries and stuff. But yeah, I think Evan Mobley, we need to have like a buzzer like for every episode, because we're talking about him each week, and just his versatility and his dominance. I think is just one of those things where it's like we got to highlight it every week, because I feel like his name has been mentioned probably at least the last 2 episodes, and then my guess is probably for many more with this run that the Cavs are on. So yeah, like you mentioned too, I think Garland and Mitchell didn't have the best nights, but I think Darius Garland, he's just emerging as like this potential, I shouldn't say potentially, like he is an all-star, kind of perennial all-star. So yeah, I think just that talent that's there. I think I've only been able to see them play once. And just their versatility, and just the fact that they can run as much as they need to. So definitely a fun team to watch. I think everybody should kind of give them a watch if you haven't yet, just because they're going to be around. They're going to be somebody that is going to bother some teams in the East for quite a while, I think. So
Yeah, continuity is definitely working to their advantage. I think you kind of undersold just how bad of a shooting night Darius Garland had, though. He scored 8 points on 21 field goals. Yeesh.
like I said, I've only watched. What is he averaging?
I mean, this year, let me pull that up for you. This year, he's averaging just over 20 points a game, 20.6 points per game on 7 assists. 7 assists, only 2.6 turnovers. So, I mean, the counting stats are pretty solid. I definitely think some of the recent games have sort of set back his scoring average a little bit this year. But yeah, that's not really what the Cavs are sort of based on. It's sort of like they have the number 1 offensive rating, and not to mention the number 1 net rating in the league thus far. But they're kind of like a dispersion of responsibilities here, and that's definitely what's making them tick. They, as we've mentioned before, they roll quite deep. I mean, I certainly don't want to forget to talk about how, I would say decent of a game. Tied another decent game that Ty Jerome had. Just looking like a guy who can get to just about anywhere he wants, which it's almost impossible. He's just not like an impressive looking guy, but always seems to get downhill, and then has the patience to either choose his shot appropriately or give it to the next guy who's open. And so I think in part that's why he's just having such an efficient year. But yeah, I mean, Mitchell, he's 35 points on 29 shots. He hit I think a couple big 3-pointers down the stretch, but that made him good for 3 of 11 on the night from deep. It's definitely going to be one of the themes of the matchup between these two is just how they go up against each other defensively. As we know, the Celtics, they have seemingly endless amounts of just like bodies and hands that can guard at the wing, and so for a team that's based on a lot of smaller guards, it could be trouble over 7 games. It may not. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, I should say. If the Celtics end up winning 67 games this year, it wouldn't surprise me if the Celtics are able to take them down in like 5 or 6, just based on that one distinction alone. But certainly credit to Jason Tatum, who led the Celtics with 33 points that night, 12 rebounds and 7 assists. Good game, solid game. I would say that we definitely saw the main players on the Celtics step up where we would expect them to step up. Looking forward to the grudge match there. Any other closing thoughts on that one?
No, I think you kind of cover that one. I think I'm ready to kind of whip around the league a little bit. A lot of other games I kind of spotlighted this last week, and kind of want to get your thoughts on some of the players and stuff. The first one was Brooklyn and Charlotte, and some of I guess this is kind of maybe Ronnie's eye test. And so these are I take some notes and things that kind of jump out at me. And Trendon Watford, his end of the game like dominance was impressive for the Nets. He had a really big game. Granted, it was an NBA Cup game, so maybe that had a little bit of extra icing, wanting that cash at the end of that prize. So, but no, he just was all over the place defensively, like held his own, but on the offensive end, kind of was the leader of that team, which kind of was surprising and jumped out when you got a Dennis Schroeder and a Cam Johnson and Finney Smith too that can be a part of stuff. And I was surprised to see Juwan Howard on the bench. I guess I keep forgetting all these moves. I thought he was still at Michigan, so that's on me. As far as the Hornets, Terrence Mann, he's a solid player. The thing that caught me, he's just wild. I think it's like wild in a good way and a bad way sometimes, and so he seemed emotionally kind of overly aggressive on some things, whether with the ref or just kind of overreacting. And I think it was Cody Martin had a really big block against Watford to give the Hornets a chance at the end, this was a really close game. These two teams, I think they're both young, don't have a lot of big stars. Like I think people know LaMelo, but these are both quiet teams. The Hornets, I wouldn't say are probably going to have as high of a ceiling as the Nets, but they had a chance. The 3-pointer went short, and the Nets ended up winning that one. Have you seen either of these teams recently? And if you do, I should say, what were some of your thoughts?
I will say that my ability to tune into Hornets games has been pretty scarce. I don't have
Charlotte. That's true.
Yeah, I don't have any access to local cable, and as it turns out, you have to wait 3 days on the league pass to watch a local game. So yeah, honestly my best bet on getting to watch a Hornets game is just showing up. I'm just gonna go there, and I actually do have a running list of games I do want to see from them. I know that they got some. Yeah, maybe throw the obligatory Bulls game in there. Why not? I gotta watch, Cody White and Zach LaVine. Gotta watch Booch up close. Gotta give him that. But I mean, for me, the big story to watch is going to just be Brandon Miller's continued development. He's definitely been having some big scoring games. As we speak, he just had a big 38-point game. For a game that the Hornets won in overtime, came down to the wire against the Pistons tonight. Yeah. Speaking of the Pistons, yeah, they've been looking pretty hot this year too. I would argue against a little bit your quick little blurb there on Brooklyn having a higher ceiling than Charlotte. I think Brooklyn is a few wins away from joining the Tankathon. Because there's no way that they're gonna keep this going. Obviously they don't have a winning record at this point, but I do think that they're kind of overperforming relative to what we thought coming into the season. And I can see that Cam Thomas has even been out lately, so they're not even getting that big scoring punch from him. And then so in the aforementioned game, Cameron Johnson leading the way with 34 points on 20 shots. That's awesome. And then Dennis Schroeder always, of course, stepping up unexpectedly. He's just one of those guys. You've seen him bounce around the league. You don't realize how much game he has until he puts on a show, or until you're watching the Olympics anyway. I think LaMelo just kind of still has like the green light of being able to do just about anything he wants, which is maybe good for a highlight reel, but also works against the team and their progress thus far. I think the big thing for the Hornets is they're still waiting for any of their centers really to come back at this point. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to change the outlook of the team altogether, but yeah, I mean, they need Mark Williams to come back. As we're talking, I'm kind of navigating around to see what his timeline's going to be.
I was going to say too, both of these teams are 6-9 currently at the end of play tonight. So they're, like I said, they're
what is that? That's like third place in the East. I'm pretty sure.
It's the 8th and 9th place teams, but yes, the East is. They've gotten 4 teams above 500 now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing, I guess the distinction I'm trying to make is that I do feel like that Charlotte is trying to make the playoffs. I think they would love at the very least a play-in spot. They've kind of they've been waiting for the moment where they have one LaMelo healthy and then just enough guys healthy and especially with the hit on Brandon Miller in the draft and his quick development, and then also getting back Miles Bridges. I think they definitely want to be competitive this year. As opposed to the Nets, who, I mean, let's not forget. I mean, they just unloaded, so many, basically every sought after player on their team, just about, I should say, not every player. They have a lot of good players still on the team, but they just unloaded this offseason and the past couple off seasons, rather, every high, big name player on their team in trade. So again, I expect the Nets to be tanking. I expect them to pull the hook on like Cam Thomas and at some point this season, if they continue to win at a mediocre level. I'd say that's at a high level for them, but overall it's like a mediocre level.
Straight off the eye test, the players themselves are not tanking. I think that's the thing. Like, the Hornets team just didn't impress me at all. Like, just the eye test, and I think I've seen maybe 2 of their games, and it just, they feel like a 9, 10, 11 place team. And to me, I think I maybe have watched 1.5 Nets games, and they were a lot more exciting to watch. And so that's the main reason. It's like, this team looked fun, but like you said, if the organization is looking to kind of trade more of these assets away, even though they might have this chemistry working with whatever they've got, and sometimes that can get you into the play-in tournament. So that's why I think they're both relatively low play-in teams. But just from that, the Nets look like a more exciting team to watch.
Yeah, and not to put you on the spot, but what do you think about the flow of the game for the Hornets was working against them the most? Do you think? Would you say that LaMelo Ball perhaps is working against their?
He thinks he can make every play. I get that, even though he does try to get other people involved, it's like a wild pass. And it's if he was to like tone down, like, he's got so much skill, but he's like still trying to show off for whatever reason. It's like, like you said, you're not trying to make a highlight tape, you're trying to win games. And I think once he kind of shifts that mentality of, it's not about you, it's about a team, then maybe, because it's like, but then it's like, who else do you have? You have like a Grant Williams and some other key pieces. But to me, there was, like I said, it was like a forgettable team. Like, no one kind of jumped out at me. Like, there was a few, but like I said, if you have Terrence Mann and LaMelo Ball, and they're both kind of wild, and like the only really stable personality on the floor was Cody Martin. So, and then everybody else just seemed to be like following the lead of everybody else on the floor. So it whether it's maybe a coaching change or something that needs to come about, I don't see this team performing very well. But granted, it's still early. It's not even Christmas. But they got to find some sort of spark and figure out a way to cut back turnovers and just poor decisions. Like, and that's,
Yeah.
But
I will say, with LaMelo being healthy now, with the type of perimeter guys that they have, I would say, I don't know if I'd call them a great shooting team, but they have options, and and yet they rank pretty low right now. They're 20th in offense in the league. So I would expect them to have a better offense at this point, but yeah, just not quite the results that you would expect thus far. Plenty of season left. Hopefully they start to find their groove a little bit better. Because yeah, I mean, especially being in Charlotte right now, I think there's a lot of people out here. This fan base is pretty great actually for a small market team. They're kind of like, they're sort of like that, like middle ground between like, are you really a big market or small market team? I mean, I guess they're technically a small market team at this point, but yeah, this fan base is ready to break out and have something to root for. That's for sure.
We'll see what happens. Let's kind of jump out west. I know you wanted to come back east, but we can come back and finish up on the East Coast. There's a couple games I kind of wanted to hit on, and this will kind of be like maybe some lightning round stuff because it was kind of the end of games on all of these. Was Denver and Memphis. Braun is aggressive. Like, again, he's I think he's much more toned down than a Terrence Mann type, but he's fun to watch. I think he was the energy spark of that team. Obviously, Jokic is going to be the heartbeat and has been on a crazy run. And it's like, I don't even have any notes for him because it's just like, this guy is going to put up 30, 20, 10, like kind of numbers, which is just ridiculous. So, but Saric to me was somebody else that kind of jumped out. Whether he has some craftiness, but then also kind of fumbled the ball a couple times too. So it's that one thing that jumped out was both teams having 20 plus turnovers in this game. It was a sloppy affair. But I also have to toot my own horn because in this game, Aldama had his career high. I think he had 27 in that game. So like I said, it was one of those things where he's becoming a much bigger part of a role player for the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies are one of those, it's funny, and it's maybe me having watched so much sports, it like meshes into the Thunder. Like I have to like purposely separate those two teams just because of Ja and SGA, like just their dominance of the ball and then kind of the similar role players that are around them. So both fun teams. Definitely, I think Edie is still out. I don't know how long did we might have mentioned this last, and that was Chet that we kind of dove into, but not really seeing him play much, or maybe he was in foul trouble when I kind of turned it on. Next game, Oklahoma City, San Antonio. Harrison Barnes and CP3, they're like the old guys at the gym, like that just end up putting up those crafty shots and everything just keeps going in and you're like, how are they doing this? And it just it's fun to watch when you're not on the other team. I think it's just something that's funny. Collins is a great big man, SGA acrobatic, and my final note is Dort is thick. Like that, I've seen guys like running into him and screens, like he is just all over the place and just enforcing his will, which I think is like we mentioned coming back and last night, I think night before Hartstein kind of came back. Dort's like that muscle for the Thunder that like they got a lot of these kind of different piece guys, and it's fun watching him. At least the last couple years, just kind of be like that solid defender in soccer, kind of like just it's hard to get around him or definitely can't go through him. So some rapid fire. I'll let you kind of react to anything that may have sparked your thoughts.
I mean, mostly I just like your Dort comment. He really, I mean, he's a brick house. Whatever mold Drew Holiday was made from, he was definitely made from.
Poured a little extra into his.
Yeah. Ooh. No, it kind of reminds me. I did listen to a great talk recently on a podcast I like to listen to, Thinking Basketball. They were talking about defensive teams and prospective defensive player of the year and how there's really just like not one person on OKC that you can choose as like the number one defender. Well, without Holmgren being in the game rather. But I guess like your runner up would be Lou Dort, just for, I mean, that's kind of like his identity, right? That's kind of what he brings to the table. He's one of those dudes that's just he's gonna guard the best guy. He's gonna make it really, really. He's just gonna make it a long night for who any of your guards out there that are trying to be your primary scorers. The other team's gonna probably spend most of the night trying to switch Dort off of them. Although then you're running into SGA, J Dub. It doesn't get much better than that. So that therein lies the problem, and and that's why OKC is historically the best defense in the league currently. I mean, we'll see how this whole thing plays out. But yeah, I mean, defensive rating, they're almost 2 full points above the next team, which is the Orlando Magic, which is a crazy thing to say because, it was this time last year that we were saying the same thing about the Magic, and what do you know, they've kept their identity going, and OKC is just kind of blowing them out of the water, and with essentially no center. Well, at least until last game. Game. Yeah, when Isaiah Hartenstein made his way back. Great opener for him, by the way.
Yeah, ridiculous numbers. 13, 14, 3 and 3 he went for last night if he didn't have a garbage time bucket. Yeah, SGA had 27 last night. I thought like the graphic might have been wrong, but it said he went 13 for 13. I haven't like double checked, but I was like, that had to have been wrong. I was going to mention one other thing to kind of toot your horn was
what's that?
The Dalton Connect. It's not his first name, is it?
Dalton Connect? No, you nailed it.
Oh, good. Yeah, he had a 37.
You got one, buddy. You got one.
He had a career high last night, 37. Had 9 threes. The Lakers gave up. They had a huge lead, gave it up, but I feel like 30-point leads within like a couple minutes or 6 points. Like I feel like I've seen so many 25-point leads just dwindle down within a couple of minutes and then it's close. And yeah, the Lakers made it close last night with Utah. Looks like they're playing right now. Trying to see their pregame right now with the Magic. So I think that'll be an interesting game to kind of, when we close up here, to kind of end the night and check that one out, just because the Lakers have been kind of weird. Like they've been up and down. I'm not sure what's really going on. There was some optimism that like JJ Redick had found this formula, and then I think everybody else kind of figured out what he was doing, and so now the Lakers are kind of an up and down team. Granted, they're 10-4 still, but it feels like they have these streaks of like 2 or 3 really bad games in a row against bad teams. So hopefully it's just early season jitters or chemistry issues that they're just kind of working through, trying to fit Bronny in and trying to figure out travel, and that's kind of distracting. So we'll see about that. But yeah, that was my other note for games from 2 nights ago. So
yeah, I'm sure that's the number one thing on their whiteboard in the front office is how to get Bronny in the game. But yeah, wicked game by Dalton Connect. I mean, it's funny when you said your boy. I was like, oh wait, are we gonna talk about Evan Mobley again? But you're right. It's if it's not Evan Mobley, it's Dalton Connect. Those are the horns that I've been tooting thus far, preseason into now.
See, people, he knows what he's talking about.
I mean, yeah, no, I think I'm just getting lucky, but yeah, I think Evan Mobley, starting when we were talking about who we thought was going to be the most improved player, if we ever got to that, and then Dalton Connect as a guy dressed up. Oh yeah. I mean, that would be rivaled mostly by McCain at this point on the Sixers, which we'll get into that a little bit more later. But yeah, I think. You were saying like the secret sauce that JJ Redick was cooking up for the Lakers seemed to go a little bit sour here for a bit, but then he's I think making the change in the starting lineup has been big for them. I mean, as we speak, they're 10-4, so certainly not a bad start. Probably the best start that they've had in a while, to be honest. Since
definitely,
I would say since the year after they won the title. I sorry folks, that's coming off the top of my head. We'd have to verify that, but yeah, I mean he's trying starting lineups now with Dalton Connect and Cam Reddish. I think just to kind of change things up. I feel like maybe their defensive identity is a little bit improved with D'Angelo Russell coming off the bench. And I mean in all fairness, and D'Angelo Russell, he's always been a player that I've enjoyed watching. He's a fantastic player with the ball in his hands. He's a pretty decent shooter. Going back to something else that you were saying, the Nuggets versus Memphis. Yeah, they split the doubleheader there, a win on each side when they played back-to-back games against each other. Both of which were Mitching Jokic for personal reasons. I haven't really invested that any further. But it certainly gave Westbrook a chance to rack up a triple-double when Jokic wasn't there. Something I would have to check to see the last time he's actually done that. But yeah, I think he's watching this 6'11" guy get closer and closer to his triple-double record, and just doing it seemingly effortlessly. Yeah. And so he had to sneak in and get one for himself while the big guy was out.
Before we go any further, the Western and Eastern Conference Players of the Week over the last week. Here we go. Out west, we had De'Aaron Fox, who averaged 40.5 points a game, 7.3
ridiculous,
and was shooting 57%. Sacramento went 2-2 in those games, but still, those are pretty ridiculous numbers. In the East was the Orlando Magic's Franz Wagner, who was averaging 30.7 points a game, 7.3 rebounds, and 5.7 assists. And the Magic went 3-0 in that stretch. So hats off to the players of the week. I'll try my best to highlight those guys, just because if we're doing this on a weekly basis, then let's make sure that we're shouting those guys out. My last keynote that I wanted to mention was Indiana Pacers guard Quentin Jackson, making his first start with the Pacers. He scored 24 points, a career high. He is somebody, if you watch the beginning of this episode, you saw him dribble down the lane. He was actually a Windy City Bull when I went to the game, and he jumped out at you while playing. He kind of was easily the best Bulls player, and was a great guard, solid defender. But yeah, loved to penetrate. And from what it looked like from some of the highlights, same play. So I'm glad he hasn't really changed much, just because his style of play seemed to be able to fit probably with any team, especially if they were coming off the bench, much less starting like he did. But yeah, hats off to you, Quentin Jackson, for a great game played. But yeah, I know we want to kind of scamper our way back to the Eastern Conference. I watched the Hawks last night. They were looking good, or maybe they weren't. And the Raptors. I have so many games fired at me, like I can't remember specifically which ones were which. So.
What a great take! That should headline this episode. The Atlanta Hawks were or weren't looking good.
They actually got stomped by the Warriors, but so yeah, they.
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, and I think that's indicative of just how solid of a season.
So good right now.
So good. I mean, it's ease of schedule or not, you're going to play the teams that are in front of you, and you hope that good teams are going to look dominant against, mediocre to non-playoff teams. Not saying that the Atlanta Hawks aren't. It's hard to count them out with just how much talent they have on that roster. But yeah, even if they have some close games against some of the better teams, seemingly the Clippers have their number. Can't win against the Clippers. Gotta do a deep dive on that. Next time they play the Clippers this season, we'll see. I mean, I assume that they're gonna have like a third matchup against the Clippers. We might have to do a deep dive to see why the Warriors can't slay that beast. I mean, the Hawks, they got Dyson Daniels gobbling up all those steals still, looking like Alvin Robinson of 2024 here.
Once I realized that I was watching him, I tried to pay attention to see if he got any steals, and he didn't while I was paying attention to him. But then I think I had a client call, so I had to turn away. But
no, he had no steals that game. I remember I didn't get to watch that game, unfortunately, because I fall asleep at like 8 p.m. now these days. In fact, I took a little dad nap before we started recording this episode. But But
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm assuming that the Warriors they just had their eyes on him the whole game. They wanted to
my
make sure that he wasn't getting any quick picks.
my quick notes here were the Warriors have shooters. They were up 20 in the second quarter. Curry, Hield, and Wiggins are super athletic. And GP3, he can fly. He had like multiple alley oops on Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like it was, he probably had like a mark of the basketball on his face for how many times Gary Payton dunked over him or how many alley oops got dunked on. Um,
GP2, he's an unbelievable
yeah,
guy. If you haven't spent enough time watching him, do yourself a favor. He's one of those guys. Every time he comes in the game, he just does something absolutely electrifying. You don't know that he's there, and then all of a sudden,
yeah.
it's just
Ooh.
like an explosion of GP2. I mean, his entire career is just a banner of unsung hero. Honestly, if he didn't share his dad's name, most people still probably wouldn't even know he exists or that he's an NBA player. But the Warriors, they couldn't. A few years ago, I mean, they had to give up 5 first-round picks to get him back because he played so well for them for their championship run that they couldn't afford to sign him. I think they had to get him back from the Grizzlies, if I'm not mistaken. The Grizzlies signed a solid contract with him, something that he deserved, and then they had to, before the trade deadline the following year, they had to give up whatever picks they had left, scramble whatever they could to get him back on the team. So rightfully so, just because he meshes so well with that squad. He's absolutely perfect for a guy who's only 6'2". You would think he's 7'5" with just how he's absolutely everywhere.
Explosive energy off the bench. I don't know if you have the box score in front of you, but I think Draymond was super close to a triple double. I have Wiggins here leading the second unit and can't pass the ball. There was some issues with like some turnovers there. I was just like shaking my head because he was on the floor with Slow-Mo, Pods, Waters, and Jackson Davis, and it was turnover city. So I didn't know what was going on, but I thought Trae Young was forcing way too many deep threes. I don't know, like to me, you shoot the deep three because it's set up by your penetration, and to me, like he just wanted to settle for the three. To me, I think they would have much smarter possessions and probably being able to swing the ball than so many quick pull-ups. And I get it that you're in a game against Steph Curry and that the matchup may get to your head of like I got to kind of outdo him, like from the All-Star game last year where Steph turned around and was looking at him while the three went in. So I just thought there were some poor decisions by him from some just bad shots. Like when the lane's open, take it. Like, why do you have to settle for a three when you got like 2 guys trying to jump you when the lane's wide open? So I just wish he would make more of an effort to kind of get in the lane, get fouled. Like that might not be his game really, which I don't think it is because he's a smaller guy. So, but to me, it's just make an easier shot, like run to that elbow and take that shot. I get that 3 is worth more than 2, but an open shot is a higher efficient or a higher percentage shot that you're going to make versus hand in your face 3. So, but that's
Yeah,
the end.
I mean, I think you're just kind of drawing out one of many reasons as to why Trae Young is such a polarizing player because he's extremely good. He's obviously he's awesome. He's got seemingly limitless range. I mean, he doesn't shoot the 3 or the deep threes even, at nearly high as an efficiency as Steph Curry does. But I mean, he's also like perennially averaging 10 assists a game. So, you got this guy who's like 28 and 10 every single year. And you feel like if you just get a lot of like, big wing, athletic, defending, 3-point shooting type players around him, that the Hawks can be good. Oh, wait, they've done that already. And they've been drafting that exact guy for years and years and years. And they just can never seem to quite get over the hump. When in 2021, when they spoiled the Sixers season by making their way to the Eastern Conference Finals, he looked absolutely spectacular, seemingly like he was getting everywhere he wanted. It was kind of like an eye opener, that season and moving forward, just like how good his floater game is. To go back to you talking about him trying to get in the lane a little bit more. I mean, even if he's not going to finish at the rim, just because he doesn't have the space to do so, the floater threat is just constantly there. And then he does essentially, and I'm going to bring this name up again. He does the Luka thing where it's like floater versus lob. Which one are you going to guard? And yeah, I mean, it was after that season that he I think he had statistically his best season in 2022, where he was shooting a lot more efficiently. He was at that point getting a lot of Luka comparisons just because of, the same draft. I forget where they were drafted alongside each other.
They were traded.
What's that? For each other. That's right. Yeah. They were draft picks traded for each other. So they were getting that comparison. And I mean, I remember people even saying, like, who do you think is going to make it to the finals first? Who's going to win an MVP first? And, now that seems silly to talk that way. Trae Young, obviously still a spectacular player. But didn't have his best game against the Warriors. And, he just, for a number of reasons, physical limitations, his shot selection, he just has a lot of duds like that.
Well, I know there's a team you're itching to kind of talk about. Let's kind of
two
teams. Who do you fire them at me? Who you got?
Yeah. Well, no, I just wanted to bring up the big topic of two teams in the East who, when we talk about the East, for a while now, we've been saying, there's only X amount of teams with a winning record in the East thus far. And a big reason for that is because two teams that everybody was high on, or at least fairly high on, at least expected to be very competitive teams going into the season, are the Bucks and the Sixers. Now, I know they've each had their own run of individual problems, very, very distinct from each other, but similarly are just kind of underperforming to start the season. And so I wanted to maybe go one at a time here and say, are we ringing the alarm or not? Are we calling this season a failure? Is it time to blow things up? Where are we on the Sixers and the Bucks at this point? I don't know. Who do you want me to start with? How about that? I'll let you choose who I ramble about first.
I think
we'll start Milwaukee. Okay.
That was one I kind of mentioned. I don't know if it was last week or kind of off camera.
They made your top four, right? They made your top four. Your top four in the East. I think they did. I don't know. I'd have to go back and listen, but I remember you talking about them, speaking highly of them anyway.
Well, who knows? That was last week. No, I just think like I think out of the two teams, I feel the Bucks probably have a better chance. I feel like the team is kind of rallying around Giannis, even like I should say the team is rallying around the star versus the star seeming or to kind of be villainized in one sense. Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham, they're definitely getting memed plenty, having that bad stretch to kind of get things not looking so well. They're back at 6-9 now. Like they're back in this mix with the Hornets and the Nets and the Pacers, who obviously probably should be better too. So I don't think it's sound the alarm. I think I might have been a little bit more last week just because the record was a little more dire than it is now. So they kind of they've had a hot streak and kind of are catching back up. They're starting to get the flow. Maybe they're getting healthy a little bit. I don't think I've seen more than 2 minutes of any Milwaukee game recently. So I really can't give game analysis from what I've seen, but I just, having heard players talk about Doc Rivers and his ability to be such a player coach, I think I just would lean more on them having a chance to kind of turn this around or be able to salvage it a lot more than Philly. I think Doc's been in some pretty dire situations before in the past, whether it was the Rivers or with the Clippers after the whole what's his name issue that happened out there, and kind of trying to, now that he's being Lawrence Fishburned in an FX movie. so I definitely, and hearing his son complain about that too. I just think that the Bucks have a better upside. Obviously, having Dame and Giannis, like just their presence to me is more than what Paul George and Embiid kind of bring. So that's my take, at least on Milwaukee. I think they're going to be in the mix. I don't think they're going to be a top team. I feel like if they win one series, they're going to get knocked out. If I had them in the top 4, I'm surprising myself, but to me, I don't see them getting.
Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. Sorry if I'm thinking about my other NBA podcast friend.
Yeah, I've said plenty of random stuff, so who knows? But yeah, I'm higher on the Bucks.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't have as much to say about the Bucks right now. Just honestly, because they've won 4 out of the past 5, and the one loss was a controversial one down to the wire, based on a foul that Giannis had on a driving LaMelo Ball. That what you said, Doc got fined for. He got fined, right, for talking smack about the refs.
He got fined $25,000 for saying that it was a bad call, and then the next day, like the
NBA later came out and said,
the 2-minute drill that the refs put out said that it was an incorrect call, but yet Doc still had to pay the fine. So like, to me, it's one of those, like, that's just kind of ridiculous that, like, he calls it a bad call. It is a bad call, and yet you still kind of get in trouble on it. But sorry, you digress.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. You said it well. It's kind of it seems to be this team orbiting around Giannis rather than him lifting them up on his shoulders again. I mean, 2 of those 5 wins, 59 points in an overtime win against Detroit, and then which is a sound like a silly thing that you would say last year, but this year, Detroit. Obviously, I think we may have alluded to earlier, looking like a solid team thus far. I'm happy about that over already.
I'm worried about that. That's the one I'm worried about.
and then a 41-point game against the Bulls. Obviously amongst the past 5 games that they've played, you could say it's kind of a little bit of a weak schedule, but I mean, shoot, they were losing games against mediocre teams leading up to this point. I mean, they lost to the Bulls already this season, and so. Like I said, you're going to play the teams that are in front of you. If you're a good team, you expect to win against less competitive squads, and that's what they've been doing. So, I mean, kudos to them for getting on this streak. Hopefully, not because Giannis is putting up 40 points a game, or needing rather to put up 40 points a game for them to get there. Interesting. Dame was out for a couple of these games. I believe he was under concussion protocol, if I'm not mistaken there. But yeah, I mean, big win against Houston, I would say, on Monday. Kind of a defensive first game there.
By 1 point.
So yeah, so I was getting pretty nervous about them, about the Bucks rather, coming into the season or early on in the season, just because it just seemed like whatever cohesiveness that we were expecting to see leading from the end of last year into this year between Giannis and Dame, it just still wasn't there. And then I've already said, like, I was kind of high on some of the offseason moves that they made, and just early on has not looked great for their perimeter defense, and that you're not going to get those numbers from Dame anyway. So kind of a nice little bounce back for them. We will see, how they're looking moving forward. They play the Pacers at home tomorrow. So, hopefully they can knock out another big win. against the Pacers, who are, good Eastern competition for them, probably somebody who's going to be trying to vie for the same playoff spot that they are.
Yep.
And then, I guess that brings us over to Philly, and they are currently
5-game losing streak.
Yeah, they are the worst team in the NBA at 2-12 as we record this podcast. 5-game losing streak, as you mentioned, 1-9 in the past 10. What's that? Sorry, I missed that part.
They're 1-10 in the last 11 games.
They are kind of just like middle of the road to end of the road in terms of their offense and defensive rating. I'm sorry, dead last in offensive rating as we speak. Yowza. Now, granted, we were giving them a little bit of leeway while waiting for Embiid and Paul George to come back. But even recently, the games that PG has played in, they've only won one of them. Unfortunately, he had to sit early last night after he hyperextended his knee. Thus far, imaging looks okay. It looks like it's probably just going to be a sprain. Hopefully, he'll just be day to day. Embiid, at least statistically, had a bigger game the other night. Putting up 30 points. He was looking a little bit more like himself, but they just could not pull it together down the stretch, and that was in spite of a solid game, career high by their currently Rookie of the Year frontrunner Jared McCain, who's come out surprising for them.
I thought you meant their other one. Yamasule, 17.
Technically not a rookie, but so those are the two shining lights on the roster. Those are the two pleasant surprises. You know what? I'm not even going to say Gershon Yabusele is a pleasant surprise. He looked solid in the Olympics, and he's just kind of been an extension of that. He's just like a massive forward who can play some backup center minutes, who's been stretching the floor. I don't know that his 3-point percentage has been spectacular to start the year. I'd have to pull that up for you guys, but if you watch, he's getting to his spots and he's knocking them down. I'm sorry, he has upped his 3-point percentage too. He's almost at 42%, and that's been after a couple of solid shooting games recently. Him and Jared McCain have been like the shining lights, the standouts for them thus far. Not the names that you would expect to be talking about on the Sixers this far this season.
Looking at their the team leaders, the career high is McCain with 15.6. So that just shows you how sad the scoring has been for this team right now.
Yeah. I mean, you would think with the squad that they have that you would at the very least expect them to have a decent offense, but it's just been rather disappointing. A loss, what was it, last night against Memphis, a Jawless, and
it was a Bane game.
Yeah, it was definitely a Bane game. But yeah, a Jawless Memphis. As you mentioned, they were without their rookie center as well. So it's just kind of a strange year for the Sixers thus far. It's kind of been reminiscent a little bit of last year when Embiid, who was having just a monster season to start, and then about 40-something games in when he got hurt, and didn't make it back until the end of the season. But the Sixers were essentially playing at the rate of a lottery team at that point, in spite of Tyrese Maxey being pretty solid. But it did take a little bit of heroics for Embiid to come back for them to be competitive enough to get themselves a play-in spot. and they were able to win their play-in game as the 7th seed, I believe, to make their way into the playoffs. But obviously they have still, regardless, have underperformed then, and are just looking like a shell of the team that we expect at this point.
Do you
Not really? Not sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you see them really making this jump to, like, they got to go on some significant run here, and if your two stars aren't playing in back-to-back games, how big of a run are they going to be able to make?
So I kind of have to call myself out here, just because on our last episode when we were picking our top 4 from each conference, I put very optimistically Philly at 4, and my feelings on them are just like a pendulum swing right now. I'm going from extreme optimism to just this place is crashing and burning right now, and that's kind of how I feel about them. I don't know. I'd have to look it up to see if any team has ever pulled themselves out of a 2-12 start to make their way into the playoffs. I guess if that were to have ever happened,
it's easier now with the play-in, so it's like you just got to get to that.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just to me, and I kind of mentioned this before, like, I think some of the stuff that's happening are kind of like poking holes in the Embiid kind of legacy of what he actually is in Philly. I think, is he a leader? Is that something is he rallying the teams? Like the report that came out that Maxey was calling him out on being late for every meeting, and that everything that he's doing is late. It's like, to me, like those are things that, like, you have to be the leader. It doesn't matter. You just show up and you're big and you can shoot threes and rebound a bunch. So to me, there's a big issue. Like I mentioned, like, to me, it just doesn't seem like this concoction that Philly keeps trying to work around him is something that, to me, it might be him is being the issue. And it's something, when do they kind of come to a point where they might make a change if they're going to try to move on? They might contractually not be able to, but like, how long does this last, whether it's an injury or just some other off-court issue? Kind of, what is your thought on is he somebody, former Philly resident, like, is that something where is he this stalwart that you want to see there for the next 5 to 8 years if you're a 76ers fan?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like things maybe have been a little bit rocky in the locker room lately, and I'm sure perhaps Joel's headspace right now it's not quite where it needs to be for him to be competitive, and a lot of it, having to deal with injuries for a prolonged period of time, never really getting back to your baseline, getting back to a point where you feel like you can just sort of like freely play your game. It's going to mess with you a little bit. You hate to see it shake him up to a point where people are questioning his leadership or his work ethic even. Quite frankly, I don't buy into that. I think that he is somebody who had high expectations ever since he came into the league, and has progressed tremendously as a player. And you don't do that with a poor work ethic. As a guy who just a couple of seasons ago won an MVP, was the runner-up the year before that, and then just last year, I know I sort of mentioned it briefly, but during his run for the first half of the season, he was averaging more points than minutes played, something that had not been done since Wilt Chamberlain. Just an absolutely outrageous stat, the pace that he was playing at. So I hope that he finds himself to come into form. And then, as you said, like a guy who used to live in Philly, I was going to those Philly games, fairly early in the process, Sixers. And let me tell you, that guy used to move. I would compare it to a giraffe that was just born. I mean, he looked like he was walking on stilts. It was like he was just trying to figure out how his body moves. I mean, to go from that to the player that we think a team can be built around. It's not something that comes from just showing up and playing ball.
I think one of the things that, whether it's unconsciously or not, is that he's always going to be compared to Jokic, and the fact that he's got rings, and it seems like Embiid is always shown as a meme crying after a loss in the first or second round. So,
and not just Jokic, but Giannis too.
Yeah,
I mean, those are like your top 3 MVP vote getters. Like every year, it seems like for the past 4 or 5 years.
And it just doesn't seem like he shows up in the right spots in the playoffs, and so they usually have some sort of an issue, and then granted there's usually other issues that are involved too when you have star players. So but it's just, you haven't performed in the big moments, and we're seeing these other kind of big centers that it's like they've won, and so now it's like, when's going to be your turn? Because if you're supposed to be as legacy making as you kind of put yourself out to be, we need to see it in the playoffs. And I think this is where I would assume a lot of Philly fans are. If you're like it's, to me, it's just something that's got to come with the role in the city, and just what comes with the comparison to those other players, that you're going to have to prove it. Otherwise you're going to have these questions just kind of constantly come up. So
yeah, no, I certainly agree with you there. Anytime what we're seeing now is, and the opinions that are being thrown around right now is just sort of adding to the narrative of him not winning yet, anyway, at least in the biggest moments. And I mean, consistently just not really showing up. I mean, he certainly had a lot of bad luck with injuries. I mean, gosh, one thing that, what's it? Yeah, well, not that bad. Knock on wood. But I mean, even just something freakish like the Bell's palsy that he had in last year's playoffs. It just can't be simple for this guy. So, but that said, yeah, you do question whether or not his game is truly built for the playoffs. You hope someone like Paul George would help smooth out those wrinkles a little bit. And I mean, as much as the supporting cast of the Sixers just hasn't really looked up to par, I'm still high on them. I am, because on paper they should be good, and there is enough continuity there, and there is enough shooting, size, talent there that we should be seeing a good team. So, I agree with you.
I'm laughing. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm laughing at the fact that you said you got to rely on playoff P in the playoffs. So we'll see how that goes when the guy who never shows up in the playoffs is supposed to be your supporting role player in the playoffs. So again, another big giant question mark for the Sixers to kind of, let's find out what happens.
That's true. They might as well just trade Tyrese Maxey back for James Harden at this point, and then have themselves a nice little trifecta there of playoff disappointments.
Yeah.
We can watch them collectively go like 10 for 80 together, and
yeah. So
just get destroyed in the first round.
But no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm still holding out. I'm still holding out for the Sixers, but man, it is not looking good. This is a deep hole to dig for yourself this early in the season. And yeah, I mean, prove me wrong. I mean, it's just seemingly no end in sight at this point.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other topics or highlights that you need to mention, or otherwise I'm all for getting into this Celtics. I can't talk. I'm all for getting into this Magic Lakers.
That's gonna be. I think you just looked into the future of the NBA 50 years from now, when it just completely sells out and they just combine the Celtics and the Lakers into one franchise. The Celtics, made up of nothing but 7'5" robots.
I could see it.
Just Wemby clones. Just a bunch of Wemby clones.
And they'd all be Washington Generals.
Yeah, exactly. No, this was supposed to be our short episode, so it's time for me to go to bed.
Like I said, this was going to be a full court fast break news. So we hope you enjoyed. We hope you guys take care, and make sure to check us out on the next Bucket Bros.
It was in. Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go fall asleep to that Lakers game.
All right, sir.
Hope you
Until
hope
next
you hope yeah. Hope you in the central and later time zones enjoy. But
we'll see. Still late. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.